You're now watching The Wash Daily. Today in news, in the world of retail, there's such a thing as what's called sliding fees. With sliding fees in retail real estate, the more visible areas of a store are more highly prioritized and to be placed in areas with the most visibility. Demand a higher premium, which makes sense for the business owners because especially the cannabis shops are struggling so hard just to make it that they need to institute these policies just to break even. The companies whose products are in the most visible places are the companies who have the most money, which favors the companies who are giant cannabis companies, not smaller businesses who can't afford to compete financially with sliding scales in the cannabis shops with these giant cannabis companies. Instead, what's going to happen, many experts argue, is that smaller craft cannabis is going to get lost in a sea of choices, and where it's so hard for cannabis companies to market themselves, one of the few places they can do it is these dispensaries. It's tricky business for these companies to find their client base. Social media won't help them out. They can't advertise anywhere. They're restricted to much of what you can do at the dispensary, which is packaging. And usually it's made of plastic and is very bad for the environment. Just another example of how federal regulation is actually bad for the environment and for the economy. Also in news, Congress just voted to protect legal cannabis from federal raids. All over the country, people have been having their operations raided by federal agents when they're otherwise not breaking any laws, especially in the states they're operating in. Great news that finally the legislation is starting to remove some of these statutes. There's been a few reports of folks looking to use cannabis for its medicinal properties and to acknowledge it as part of their religious practice. You can look at a long line of religions, and over the years, many have tried to use cannabis legally as part of their religious ceremony. One of the groups is the Rastafarians, a sect of Judaism. And what they're looking at, the first chapter, the 29th verse in Genesis, where it says that God created the plants and he intended the food to be the plants that he created, especially the seed-bearing herbs, which he calls good. In Exodus, we see the Hebrew Israelites making out of canna balsam, the holy anointing oil. Reverend Dr. Ann Armstrong of the Healing Church of Rhode Island, cannabis advocate group, certainly looking at the biblical piece of cannabis, and they've done some advocacy and some protesting and some jail time for cannabis. And there's another group in Indiana where a church has been trying to make the claim they're using cannabis for part of the religious ceremony. The court said they couldn't do that it would be unlawful. How don't we get a religious exemption? Cannabis is the food we're supposed to eat. End of story. And if that's not good enough for religious exemption, I don't know what would be. Just food for thought. Thanks for watching The Wash Daily.